Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. This week's episode is titled, Remember to Close the Communication Loop. Communication is two-way. And one of the things that Kevin Eikenberry and I often say is that communication is about message sent and message received. When we say that, what we're trying to say is that just sending a message is insufficient to guarantee communication. We also want to understand how the message is received on the other end. Now, this message sent, message received idea applies in a different way also. For example, it applies when we speak with other people. And when I say speak with other people, I mean all the different forms of how we can speak with other people, either in face-to-face, on the phone, or on a video chat. In any of these situations, we typically give the other person, when they're delivering a message to us, we send back messages ourselves, either in verbal or nonverbal clues that we have at least received the message the other person sent. Now, it's important to recognize that these message received clues, the verbal uh-huhs or I hear you or head nod or smile or something that indicates we heard the other person's message, that we're engaged in the conversation, are a really important part of the overall communication process. They communicate to the other person that they were at least heard. It doesn't necessarily confirm that we understood exactly what they intended for us to understand. It does at least confirm that we received the message. When you think about important messages we send, I'm thinking today of a situation where maybe I'm mailing a payment to the Internal Revenue Service for my taxes. I always mail that, return receipt requested. And that, combined with the fact that they cash my check, confirms for me that they received my message and that I'm okay with them. Now, that doesn't mean they won't come back and audit me later. It does mean at least they received my payment. They received that message sent. And that's an important thing because it helps me feel at ease that, hey, at least my message was received and accepted. Now, that's a very specific situation where I pay for the return receipt because the message conveyed is important enough to me to make sure it was received. And I think that general concept is something we can think about in terms of other communications we have with people. Maybe communications that don't have quite the same stakes attached to them. Maybe it's just day-to-day communication with a business partner or a coworker. It's the emails back and forth to a customer or a vendor. It's the request for help from a website. It's the text message with a friend. It's an instant message with a coworker. There are lots of different situations where this applies, where we are using some form of written communication, and in today's world, a lot of it is electronic written communication, to communicate with other people. And I see a very common pattern where we send a message and get a reply, and we don't actually let the other person know that we got their reply. Or we get a request from a person and we sit on it and don't necessarily at least let them know that we got the message and that we're working on the response. We either receive messages that we don't acknowledge or we send messages that aren't acknowledged. And I think, frankly, that hurts our communication effectiveness. Now, consider a situation like this. What if you were in a face-to-face conversation with a person, face-to-face in person? You were talking and they were sitting, looking at you. They never nodded their head even once. They never smiled. They never even looked like they were acknowledging your presence. They never looked you in the eye. They never made any verbal acknowledgement about anything you said. It was total, cold, stone face, no acknowledgement at all. How would that feel? Now, maybe for some of you, it's not a big deal. I'm going to guess that for most people, it would be very frustrating. And that cold stone, no acknowledgement, no looking in the eye response in a face-to-face communication, is effectively what we do in emails, text, and instant messages when we don't acknowledge receipt. So if you want to talk like a leader, if you want to be a truly effective communicator, meaning that you take responsibility for the communication process, that you do everything in your power to make sure that there's clarity of message sent and message received, then I suggest you always look at written communications and assess whether this last communication really closes the loop or not. Now, for example, if you are in an email or text or instant message communication with a person and you're trying to set an appointment or a meeting, and the last message says, see you at blank time on such and such a date, whatever, and it's very clear that there's been enough back and forth that we both understand the endpoint, then maybe you don't need to add another message on that. For many other messages, though, it's easy to leave them sort of in limbo. Leave the other person wondering, did they actually receive my message? Maybe you've been in this case where you sent an email or a text and you're wondering, was that even seen? And I'm going to suggest whether other people do that to you or not is irrelevant. If you want to talk like a leader, you don't do it to other people. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is look at every written message, email, text, instant message, and ask yourself this question. Is this written correspondence at a logical end? Would it actually help the other person if I at least acknowledge that I received the message? This doesn't necessarily imply a long reply. It's just some kind of reply. It may not have to be much to at least let them know you got the message. Maybe it's a simple thumbs up in a text message or an instant message. Maybe it's a smiley face emoji. Maybe it's a quick little got the message. Maybe it's a quick, I've received this, I'll reply at such and such a time. Or I'm thinking about the answer, I'll get back with you later today. Or something along those lines, just to let the other person know you've seen the message. Just acknowledge you got the message so that you are taking responsibility for the communication flow and making sure that no matter what other people do to you, you don't leave them wondering if you got the message. So what I'm going to suggest is this. Always remember to close the communication loop. And a face-to-face communication, that's relatively easy and automatic, although you might want to think about it there. Are there any times where you don't actually acknowledge that you've heard a message from people? It's possible that it happens in that situation. The most likely time is in written correspondence. So in all your written correspondence, remember to close the communication loop. If you do that, you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.